Hey people, so we're going to talk about JavaScript array method called map. Okay, very useful one. I'm just going to hop right into it. Let's say, so it's an array method. It means it's something that you're going to use with arrays, obviously. The way JavaScript has what they call prototype inheritance, which means you have the array is a kind of object, right? Everything's objects in JavaScript. And so your objects can have methods on them. When you try to call a method on an object in JavaScript, if it doesn't find it, it goes and looks at that parent um, sort of object. It goes up what they call the prototype chain. So it goes to look like, hey, is this object just some object that Alex made, or is this some object that's like sort of built in? And so it keeps looking up. And first, if it's one that I just made, it's probably not. But if it sees that it's an array, it says, "Oh, okay, I know about arrays. Let's see, is there something on the array that is built into JavaScript that we use?" And sure enough, they're on the array dot prototype. There's the map function. Okay, so that's why every array can access this map function. Or since it's on an object, we call it a method. So it's just a function, but because it's attached to an object, we call it a method. Okay. So if I had an array, and I'm going to start it the same way everybody else does, right? Just a simple array, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. What happens if we run this, right? Nothing. Why is that? Of course. I have to call it something. I have to declare it. Let's call it a number array equals. Now let's try to run it. Okay, in repl it here, it's going to return undefined because we just, well, let's call it num first. But that's not the problem, but let's just call it something. That's not silly. We didn't tell it to do anything with this array, so it's undefined, right? But now we have this number array declared, so if we want to, in the REPL here, say num array, it should return our number array. Right, sure enough, there it is. Okay. Just to show, if we change it, now it should return, yeah, with my fix there. Okay, so let's keep it 1, 2, 3, 5. Keep it simple. Okay, there we go. So now, just to show you, why can't I type an O? Arrays are actually objects, right, in JavaScript. Okay, so that's why it's returned object here. But there's another one we can do. We could say array, and that's the array prototype, is array. And give it what we wanted to check if it's an array. And we want to check our num array. True. Okay, so we know it's an array. Okay, cool. So there's a little, I don't know if you know about that. So we had num array, right? It returns what it is. So we were supposed to be talking about map. Okay, so map does is it's kind of like it's a loop basically. It's like a for loop, but it's a special kind of for loop, right? Where it's going to loop through your array, and what it's going to do, it's going to, for each item in your array, it's going to return that item with whatever you tell it to do to it. You're going to give it some sort of action or change it in some way, and it's going to return a brand new array. This num array is not going to change, doesn't touch that. It's going to return a brand new array. So we'll just hop into it. I mean, it would probably be a little more clear. So we say map, because remember we said this is a method on the big array, right? The prototype array. So every array has this method built into it, even though I didn't put it in there, because it goes up the prototype chain and finds it. And the map method takes a function, right? So we can give it, as an argument, it takes another function. So, like I say, it's a loop. So it's going to loop through every number. and it's going to do something to every one of those numbers. So what do we want to do with it? What do we do? Let's just console log it. What happens if we do that? Yeah, sure. Here we go. So it looped through. This is the arrow function, ESX arrow function is for each number, do this, right? So it did that every time. And so what is this undefined business? Remember I said what it does is it returns a new array. Well, we didn't tell it to return anything to the new array that was created. So there was nothing returned. It was undefined is what we returned. Each time it went through, it console logged, but it didn't say what to put into our new array. So every time it says undefined. So what if we want to make actually this thing go into the new array? We would just do this, right? Then it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nope. Why not? Because I erased the parentheses. Now, this is a silly thing to do because it's just, well, I guess it could be useful. Maybe you're making a copy of an array. Is this a legitimate way to make a fresh copy of an array? I'm not sure. But this is sort of not the most exciting thing to do. What if you wanted to change, you had an array, and this is all the examples do. You wanted to make everyone bigger. What's gonna return here? You tell me. Think about it for a second. Here we go. Yep. So what it did, it went through every number or every item in our array, and it returns the number plus 1. So sure, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it should be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. But now what? We can't access that. We have to run that every time. If we wanted to save that new array that's created, you could say const new array equals that. Then what you're going to do, it's undefined because of the way this REPL works. It doesn't. We didn't tell it. We just declared something. We declared something else. We didn't tell it what to return, so it's returning undefined. But if I said now new array, it's going to tell me what the new array is. And that's our 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so we can reference that again. So what if we want to do something a little more creative than that? It doesn't have to be just the numbers, right? So what if we wanted to say the number plus hello? Well, first of all, this is going to be a little tricky. What's going to happen here? What happens in JavaScript when you mix up numbers and strings? Think about it for a second. Do you know? Turn them into a string, right? Because that's the whole coercion in JavaScript with the double equal sign, triple equal sign. You probably know about that. Same thing's going on here. It's took them and made it into a string. Okay, so that leads me to the next thing. What could we do that's a little more creative again? What if you had something? So let's make it a string. What can we do with strings in terms with web development? What if we had something like a div that had our number, right? What about this? What is this going to do for us? Will that work? No, that's a problem. It doesn't like that unexpected token. So what if we put it in like backticks, right, for our string? Now what? Okay, div 1, div 2 with the 3. So now we're getting somewhere. Let's make that a little more. Here is the number this time. Okay, so what if, well, this doesn't do a whole lot for us in this REPL right here, but what if we had something in web development where something that could read and do something useful with an array of stuff? Well, what about React? This is used in React all the time. So I happen to have this thing over here. I have this little dog thing. I got the I made a little dog component right here. You can see that's a component, right? So what's in the dog component? Okay, so it has some state, starting off with pictures of dog, which is an empty array. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about array mapping on arrays. So it's going to come back. So what's this part? Component did mount. What's going on here very quickly is it's calling this API and it's saying, hey, give me 3 random dog images. And if you go to this dog CEO, it'll tell you how, how the API call works. But this means call 3 random dog pics. So the way fetch works, you do some thens, right? So then you get the response and turn it into JSON. Then you take that data and I'm console logging it. Why am I console logging? I was just trying to figure something out before, but I can show you what it is. So it's coming back and console logging the data, right? So there it is. But let's get back out of that for a second. And then it's setting the state. This is the state up here. Dog pics, an empty array. Dog pics data.message is an array. That's probably why I was doing this, right? To find out that data dot, this is the object here is the data that we got back, and the message is the array of the 3 dogs. Okay. So it just so happens that React knows just what to do with this stuff. If you take our state up here, which is now not an empty array, it's an array of 3 dog pics, and you say, hey, this.state.dog pics, remember that's in our array, and map over it for each one of those dogs, create this piece of HTML that has the dog. And if you remember the array that we looked at, each dog in the array is actually just a link to a picture. So what did we do here? We did, so it's going to go, the H2 is just the title there, and then I said, hey, map over that array and give me an image. And what's the image of? Well, it's whatever each one of those array items. So there's your example of map and the practical example of how it's used in React. Hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to send a message, post a comment, or what have you. All right, thanks.